Thank you for your patience as I do that. So for our speakers today, we have Helen Fitzgerald, the Service Manager of Information and Support with Sage Advocacy. And we also have Michael Palmese, Digital Contact Executive with Citizens Information Board. I'm going to let them explain a little bit more about who they are and what they do in just a moment. And then for myself, I'm the Community Programs Manager with Irish Community Services. We are one of 10 Irish centers across the US. And we do a lot of different things. You know, it's mostly social services and immigration services for the Irish diaspora in the US. And I'm going to share a little bit more about the coalition that we're part of because we're very grateful and excited for our collaboration with the Coalition of Irish Immigration Centers. They're a co-host for today, and they are a coalition of all 10 of those centers across the US, which aims to advance its members through collaboration and education to benefit the global Irish in the United States. So my center is based out of Chicago, and these 10 centers are in many different places: New York, Boston, San Francisco, San Diego. And we know a lot about how to support, you know, the local Irish community in our respective regional areas. But it's a great benefit to be able to come together and learn from one another nationwide, which the coalition helps us do. And you know, through events such as today's event, especially. Okay, so now I'm going to hand it over to Helen Fitzgerald, actually, to give us a little bit of an introduction to, you know, these systems for nursing home and home care in Ireland, and what does it even mean to kind of learn about these systems and try starting to access them. So take it away, Helen. Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie. If you want to go on to the next slide. So today I'm just going to go through Sage, our service, and what we do and how to access an advocate for somebody who lives within the Republic of Ireland, and what public home support services are available for people, and then the Nursing Home Support Scheme Act then as well, the how people can access long-term care, the financial aid for that as well. And next slide. So Sage are an advocacy service that were developed in 2014, and initially we supported people just in nursing home care, but our remit has changed over the years and we support the person now wherever they are, through advocacy or through information and advice as well. So we are a free service and we're a fully funded organisation as well. Next slide. And so there's the main contact for our service is our national line. We only have the one office in the Republic of Ireland, but we do cover everywhere in the country. So the main contact is our phone line there, which is the 536-7330, and our info@sageadvocacy.ie. And people contact us for a wide range of issues that they might have, maybe financial or legal. They want to know what their general rights and entitlements are, particularly around access and supports that they might need in the home, or they're having issues in nursing home services and they want some help with that as well. Next slide. This is just a brief slide of the kind of supports that we provide to people who live either in their own home or they're in hospital or they're in nursing home care. So the main reason people do contact us is in relation to finances. They might have issues with accessing their finances, or they might need support with managing and putting in financial management arrangements, or they may be in debt and they need help with making sure that the service is not pulled from them, or that they don't get a notice to quit from the nursing home that they're in. You get a lot of calls as well in relation to people who are in nursing home care and they want to return home to their own home, and they need somebody to navigate the services that can be available to them to support them to return home. So for home supports, there you can get HSE home support hours, but it would be quite minimal. Generally, the maximum home care that you would get is 21 hours per week. There are some instances where you may get home care hours additional to that, but otherwise you would have to pay for additional hours. There's no statutory right to home care at present in Ireland. So a lot of people would rely on paying privately for home care. But the home care that you can access from the HSE will be mainly around personal care. So supporting you to get in and out of bed in the mornings and in the evenings, dressing and undressing, and personal care then, such as showering and shaving and that. So they are provided by the HSE or by an approved provider that's on the HSE list as well. So the home support is free and you don't need a medical card to apply, and your income is not assessed. But if you do need more hours, you would have to pay separately to the home care that you will receive. It's generally for people over 65, but if there is a specific illness, that can be looked at as well, and you can get home care through the service as well. So I have the link there for the application form. So once the application form goes in, generally, if you're living at home, a public health nurse will go and visit you to do your assessment to see the type of hours that you may need to support you to live at home. Next slide, Jamie. I've just added in some other services that are available in the community for people, the Alzheimer's Society, family carers, age friendly, who would support people with home adaptations and that's required in the home to support you to live well at home, and then befriending services as well. So I've just left the links there for anybody who wants to see them there. Next slide. So the nursing home support scheme, or the Fair Deal scheme as it's known, is it's how you can get financial assistance if you require long-term care. It is means tested. It's a very long, complicated form, and the process can be quite long as well. So I'm trying to drill it down into 5 or 10 minutes, but I'll certainly take questions after. So there's a few elements to the Fair Deal scheme. Once it's approved, the HSE contribute a certain portion of what you're not able to pay to the nursing home. It's very important for the person to be supported to pick a nursing home that they want to choose. The majority of nursing homes in Ireland are private or voluntary nursing homes, and there's not that many HSE nursing homes. It will be less than 20% of the total number of nursing homes. There is an agreed maximum price from the National Treatment Purchase Fund. So I have the link there as well that you can have a look at. So there's a agreed set price for each nursing home, and that's what's provided to the nursing home to pay for the person, and then you contribute what you're able to pay towards your care as well. Next slide. So the first step is the needs assessment. So you will be medically assessed to see if you are a candidate for long-term care, if you actually require it or not. So a part of that assessment then is looking at your daily activities of daily living and how you can do that at the moment, any personal or healthcare services that you currently receive, and if that's enough for you. What kind of informal support or community support you already have. Most important is the person's will and preference, and are they making the decision to go into the nursing home, and is that something that they want to do? So a public health nurse or somebody from the Fair Deal office will do the assessment if the person's at home, and that will go to a placement forum then to determine whether or not the person needs long-term care. So once that's approved, then the rest of the form then can continue. Next slide. So you are financially assessed, and there's 3 different elements that they look at. So they look at what income you have, they look at what savings you have, and they look at then your non-cash assets. So your home, your principal residence, the main home you lived in, and then any other properties or land or farms and that you've had. So in terms of your income, any income that you have will be assessed. So your public pension, your private pension, and any money that you've transferred over in the last 5 years. If you're a single person or you're widowed, you are assessed on 80%. If you're part of a couple, it's combined, and then you're assessed on 50% of that. So it doesn't matter how much each of the couple has, it's jointly put together, and then you're assessed on half of that using the criteria that's here as well. So there are deductions then that are allowed, and they're taken into consideration when they're looking to see how much you can afford to pay. So your health expenses, interest on loans, property tax, and rent isn't included anymore either. So you can rent out your principal residence and you won't have to, the money from it won't be taken into consideration. So they do look at savings as well. So if you're single, you can have 36,000 in savings that won't be looked at. And if you're part of a couple, you can have 72,000 that won't be looked at. Anything after that then will be included in the assessment. Your savings, it's looked at 7.5% of your savings each year. And then as your savings start to go down, you can ask to be reassessed then over time if your savings and that start to go down. Next slide. So there's the third option then. So after your principal residence or your main home has been looked at, a portion of it, so 7.5% of its value over 3 years, is taken into consideration as well. So, for example, if your home was worth 100,000, to 22.5% of that, so 22,500 would be used as well to pay towards your care over the course of 3 years. So if you can't afford to pay that over the 3 years, the HSE will offer to pay it. And that's what's called ancillary state support or the nursing home loan. So you have two options. You can pay it over the 3 years if you have the financial means to do so, or the HSE will pay it for you. And then it's taken out of your estate then after you pass away. If you're part of a couple and the person's still living at home, that loan can be deferred as well in their lifetime. Next slide. So this is the only option that's available to people to pay for care. So there is a few issues that we would come across. So people contact our service, and these are the types of issues that we come across when people are living in nursing home care. So although you get to keep 20% of your income, that can be considered quite low if you're only on a pension. And a lot of nursing homes, particularly private and voluntary nursing homes, have additional charges for social activities and things like that. So it's important before you're signing any contracts of care to look at what those additional charges are and if you're actually able to afford them. There is a nominated contact on the form, and that's the person that gets the information for the application. So it's important for the older person to continue to be included in the process so they know what's going on with their application. Because of the shortage of beds, I guess, in nursing homes in some areas, there's not an option to pick the nursing home that you would like because perhaps they have wait lists and it could be a long time. So sometimes people will go to a nursing home that they're not happy in or it wasn't their first choice. So it'd be important for that person then to get in touch with an advocate or somebody that can support them to be on a transfer list for the nursing home of their choice. Minor things like letting services know when you've moved into a nursing home that you've changed your address. The Department of Social Protection, so your social welfare or your pension payment, that can't stop because sometimes they'll send you a letter to ask you if your financial means have changed, and if you don't write back to them, your pension will stop, and that could lead you to go into arrears. So it's important to let services know that you've moved address. Because most of our nursing homes are private nursing homes, there are some services that private nursing homes might charge you for, so physiotherapy, speech and language therapy, and equipment that you might need, such as an air mattress. So it's important for the person to have somebody to help them with the services to try and get these services for them for free. It's important not to give away your assets to reduce your means before you go into a nursing home because it's still taken into consideration within the 5 years, and there will be a statutory right to home care, so you might need your home down the line if you wanted to return back home. There's penalties for giving false information. A means assessment can be appealed, or if your savings start to reduce, you can ask for a reassessment. And if you're making a will, then it's important to let your solicitor or that know that you have the nursing home loan if you have availed of it. So that can be taken into consideration as well, because revenue do have to be paid after the person passes away. Next slide. This is something I could probably have a separate webinar on and discuss it for hours. So I've tried to drill it down to 1 or 2 minutes. This act has repealed the 1871 Lunacy Act within Ireland. So this act is for somebody who requires support to make decisions. Perhaps they can no longer do so themselves. So some examples, if you have a dementia or acquired brain injury and a decision needs to be made about your life and you're not able to do it on your own, that there's mechanisms now in place for you. So if a person requires nursing home care and they're not able to engage with the application process, or they don't understand that their finances need to be used to pay for care, or they don't understand the implications of the nursing home loan, then an order may have to be made to the court by somebody to make those decisions on the person's behalf. Next slide. So if the person requires care and is unable to make these decisions, a decision-making representation order would need to be presented to the court. Now, the only thing is that the person, whoever the applicant is, they do need to be in Ireland to sign the paperwork and lodge the papers in the courts. In terms of the fair deal, they are looking at having online applications, but it could be another year or two before that happens. So at the moment, all of the applications are paper-based and they can obviously be posted or emailed. But there should be an online portal, but it could take a bit of time. In terms of the courts, you do have to lodge the papers in the courts. So at the moment, they can't accept digital signatures. It does have to be in person, but that should change down the line. And that's it. If anybody has any questions, or I'll hand you back to Jamie.
Yeah, just a reminder for questions, it's the Q&A function in your bottom toolbar. So just click that and go ahead. I think I'll wait a second because that was a lot of really good information, Helen. And I mean, I have questions hearing it all, so I'll give attendees a second to ask any questions.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not seeing any questions yet. So yeah, we can move along. So we're going to have just a little transition where Michael will be speaking now. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so he can. And for this next part, Helen gave a really great overview of basically what are kind of the nuts and bolts of the fair deal scheme of home care. But now the question is, how do you kind of access this, especially if you're abroad? So the reality is, unfortunately, there is not an option on the HSE website to apply online, but you can find the applications online. You can find a PDF of the application, print it, fill it out and post it, or email it to the service. So it is possible, it just can be tricky. And Michael's gonna share a little bit more about how can we find information online and kind of navigate websites to access all of this. And before you start, Michael, one more thing I'll share is I'm gonna right now put the slides in the chat because all of those links that Helen has, we want you to have them too, so you can start looking through these things online. So I'm going to put that in the chat right now, and then I'll hand it over to you, Michael.
All right. I should be able to see this now. So yeah, I am Michael, and I am a digital content executive at Citizens Information Board. Citizens Information Board is a state agency that reports to the Department of Social Protection, and the specific area in which I work is called the Returning to Ireland portal. And this was set up by the Department of Foreign Affairs after a report from 2018. So I work within Citizens Information, or my actual role within CIB is funded by the Department of Foreign Affairs and is part of this broader Irish diaspora strategy, trying to engage with people who live abroad but who are Irish citizens and who have an interest in returning. So what I'm going to do really quickly is just go through a few very brief, very succinct PowerPoint slides that's going to explain to you what I'm going to do in the other screen sharing section of this presentation, which is just showing you how the website works, what the Citizens Information Online website is, and how you can access information, and what the value of it is, and a few other avenues for getting information, particularly while you're in the United States and not here in Ireland. So this is the basic homepage for the Citizens Information Online website, and we have it organized according to different kinds of categories. So we have health, social welfare, return to Ireland. This is the portal area that I manage. We've got stuff on justice, government, environment. We've got all kinds of categories on the Citizen Information Online website. Again, I'm going to go in and navigate through this so it won't be so abstract, but just to show you here the things that I'm going to go into specifically, kind of dovetailing off of what Helen was already talking about, because even I noticed that was very, very technical, particularly how fair deal scheme works. We have, for example, a whole page on nursing home information, and we've got subheadings about home improvement supports that are available, how you go about the process of moving into long-term care, as well as supports for continuing to live at home. And one thing that I want to emphasize with the Citizens Information Online website is that what we tend to do is take information that's in legislation or in statutory instruments that are implemented by ministers, and we try to boil it down to the essentials, and most importantly, in plain English. And I'm sure many of you know, if you've dealt with anything really technical, it's sometimes very hard to glean the basic meaning of what you're supposed to do and where you're supposed to go to get something done. And what we try and do on the Citizen Information Online website, anything we put up there is designed to be easily digestible and break everything down into plain English for you so you can actually take action based on whatever you're trying to get done, form you're trying to get filled out, or some entitlement you're trying to determine if you're able to get it. We try to make sure all that's very plain English, easily accessible, easy to read, and that the website itself is easy to navigate. So I'll go into this and just explain to you what this page looks like, the moving home to long-term care, or moving from home into long-term care. Then I'm also going to go into home support information. So basic explainer, rules about how this scheme actually works, and how to apply for it. So we have all of those little things splayed out on the actual page that gives you basically everything you want to know. Explains what it is, what are the rules, and how do you apply for it. And then I'll also give you some information about citizen information centers and our citizens information phone service. And then I'll talk a little bit about relevant documents you should bring with you and basically what you should have handy depending on if you're calling the phone service or if you're calling in at an individual CIC. Basically, what I'll explain right now is that citizen information centers are physical locations where you show up, and the phone service is something you'd contact while you're in the United States. So obviously, there are certain things you can't bring with you to the phone service that wouldn't be very useful if you're calling from the United States, but they would be useful to have if you're going in person to a citizen's information center. So I'll come back to that in a moment when I've got the website up and available. So just one second. Of course, if you've got any questions, feel free to interrupt me. I'm happy to go off on a little tangent depending on whatever particular questions you've got that might be very, very salient. So this is the Citizens Information Online. I think everyone should be able to see this. Yeah, great. So like I showed you on the PowerPoint, this is the basic starting page. We've got our most popular pages up here. Registering to vote is very important right now. We've got European and local elections coming up next month, so a lot of people are looking into that. Everyone wants to know when the next public holiday is. Stuff about state pensions, local elections, like I said, something I deal with a lot, citizens trying to get citizenship through birth or descent. So these are all the different categories that we have on the website: justice, death and bereavement, consumer concerns, how do taxes work, and then we've of course got the returning to Ireland portal. I'll very briefly actually show you what this looks like, just so you're aware, because this is what I manage. This is just dedicated specifically to people who are looking to return to Ireland, and all the questions that you might have. You might have questions about if you want to start working here, or if you're retiring. We've got a whole area focused on retiring. We've got stuff about planning your journey home. So really practical things about, I want to ship my belongings back. what do I need to do about that? How do customs work? What is a customs declaration? Those kinds of things we've got boiled down to really plain English language to make it easy for you to understand. If you're returning in a crisis, we've got information about supports that can help you out. Something that I'm really interested in because I'm working on it right now. And as I'm sure you can tell, I'm an American. I moved to Ireland in August 2019 to go teach at Maynooth University. We've got some new pages that are being created this year. I'm doing research on them and publishing them over the course of this year on coming to Ireland from specific countries. So I've already done the United Kingdom and the United States. So I've got something here that would be targeted towards people like you. So people who are in the United States, maybe coming to Ireland, and have just some general questions about, how do the taxes work? If I want to work, how do I do that? How does social welfare work? How's the healthcare system structured? There's both public and private. I explain that in plain English. Or if you've got questions about, oh, do I need to file a tax return? I've got all of that laid out here so you can understand how you need to still do your foreign earned income exclusion if you are working in Ireland. I've got some information about how taxes work in Ireland with the standard rate of 20% and then the higher rate of tax, how those bands work. And then we always got plentiful hyperlinks out to resources to help you understand where we're getting our information from and external sources. So I've got things here from the IRS, the Interactive Tax Assistant tool, those kinds of things. So I've tried to kind of go out and anticipate what issues you might have coming over and put that up here in plain English for you. So just be aware of that. It's called the Returning to Ireland portal. And just in case anyone has a question that's very technical that I can't answer right now, I'll pop it in the chat later on. But just so you're aware, for the Returning to Ireland portal, we have an inbox, a dedicated inbox that you can contact me with, or you can contact me through that inbox, and I will respond to any of your queries. It's returning the number 2 Ireland at ciboard.ie. Again, that's returning the number 2 Ireland at ciboard.ie. Again, I'll put it in the chat, but just be aware that you can always contact me through that email address and I can get into the real nitty gritty of your specific circumstances. So this is the moving home to long-term care page. So we've got a little introduction here about, as you get older, you might want to be moving into some kind of long-term institution for care. And then we've got these various subheadings that organize the given page. So if you ever are on here and you've got a query and you know exactly what you want, we've got these anchor links here, or these subheadings you might call them, where you can immediately navigate. So let's say you're looking into supports to just improve your home. Say you want to get something done to your home to make it more adaptable to you as you get older and you need something. You need railing on your stairs or you need a hoist of some kind. You can click on this and you'll be pulled down to the specific subheading that will go into some detail about different schemes for which you might be eligible, about, like I just said, the housing adaptation grant for people with disability. You might also be able to apply to your local authority for certain kinds of housing aids to improve your home. Like I said, those kinds of things, getting improvements to toilets to make them more accessible, hoists, railing, anything like that. There are various kinds of housing supports available to older people. We've got links here that will sometimes go to outside resources, so the HSE, but they might go to other places in the Citizen Information Online website. So just to give you an example of that, since it's already...
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you for really quick, Michael. I just wanted to let people know that as you're clicking through these pages, I'm putting them in the chat function.
Yeah.
So if they want, they can click the link I just put in the chat and follow along with you on their own. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, and I should mention, I popped all of these web addresses into the notes section of the PowerPoint, so you can follow it through there as well. So yeah, just be aware that, when you get on the Citizen Information website, there are those categories and you kind of navigate through those categories. Just to give you an example, since this has been talked about already by Helen, you may be able to apply for this nursing home support scheme, or more commonly called the Fair Deal Scheme. If you click on this link here, you'll notice it's highlighted in blue with a little underline. If you click on it, you're going to go to another part of the Citizens Information Online website. So just to explain to you kind of where you are, this is within the broader health category. So if you go into the health category at the homepage and you click on health services, there's going to be a page that you can go to called Health Services for Older People. And there's a dedicated page just for the Fair Deal Scheme that goes into all of the technical detail about, what is it? How does it work? What does it cover? How do you apply? How can you appeal if a decision is made that you don't like? We've got all of that boiled down here in very plain English language that will tell you what's covered, accommodation, food, the kind of things Helen was talking about, nursing and personal care, laundry service, basic aids, all those kinds of things are covered by the deal. How about going about choosing a nursing home, moving from hospital care into long-term care? And then we talk about the different kinds of steps for the process, filling in the application, the care needs assessment, how the financial assessment's done, and how to apply for a nursing home loan. This is optional, but it's there. So we've got all of this explained for you in a very straightforward way that you can kind of go through at your own pace. I know I'm about 2.5, coming up on 3 months in this role. And this Fair Deal thing, I feel like every time I look at it, I always find something that gives me a little bit of pause. I'm a little bit confused, like, how does that work? Who does what where? But it's all laid out here in very step-by-step format that I hope makes it more straightforward and easy to, and not so forbidding, not so scary. So we also have a home support service. So this is also within the health category in the sub area health services. And then we have a whole category of health services for older people. So I'll go back up one level and just show you where this is. So within the health services for older people, we've got all these different pages. So Fair Deal Scheme, where we just were, but then we also have a whole page dedicated to explaining the home support service. So again, we always have a little bit of an introduction, just explaining what it is and what community care is, support at the local level, that kind of thing. Who can apply? What does it cost? There's no charge. In fact, there is no cost. And the rules. How does it work? How are you eligible? What kind of services would you get? What is the care needs assessment? How does that work? And then how to apply. So for example, you can see here, we actually will often link out to individual PDF application forms and information booklets. So if you click on this here, you can see we've actually got a link to the most up-to-date information booklet and application form. So all the rules are in here and all of the appendices, as well as the actual application form here. Now, I know that's quite technical. That looks quite forbidding. And this brings me to the other thing I wanted to talk about, which is getting help and support for this if you're a little bit confused or concerned or worried that you're going to make a mistake when you're trying to fill something like that out. So, like I mentioned on the PowerPoint slides, we have what are called citizens information centers. These are physical locations in various cities and villages in Ireland that are staffed by information officers who can walk through form filling or can answer questions for you about social welfare entitlements in a face-to-face setting. So this is something that you could do once you're here in Ireland, and they have dedicated hours where you could walk in and have an appointment with an information officer, talk to a person face-to-face, and really explain to them what your specific circumstances are, what your questions are, what your issues are, and they can walk through it with you and even help you fill out a form if you're having that kind of trouble. So we've actually got on our Citizens Information Board website a handy little tool that can help you locate the nearest CIC by you once you've moved here. So there is a whole map here, and all of these little dots are individual citizens information centers across the entire state. So just as an example, when I moved to Ireland in August 2019, I was taking up a teaching job at Maynooth University. So that is in County Kildare. So you can look on the map here if you want to find the one closest to you. But if you just know what county you're in, you can go to there and say, oh, I'm living in County Kildare. And we'll pull up a page here that will load up just this region, just the County Kildare region. And you can see there are three. There's one in Newbridge, there's one in Naas, and there's one in Maynooth. So this is the one that I would have gone to if I had questions while I was living in Maynooth from 2019 into 2023. And if you want to know the specifics about that particular location, if I click on the Maynooth CIC, it'll really tell you exactly where it is in Google Maps. And it'll also explain, when is the reception desk open? When is the drop-in clinic open? So that's just showing up off the street whenever you've got a question. And they do appointments. So if you've got something really complex that needs help, that requires help, they can schedule you for an appointment where you've got a little bit more time to go through filling out a form or making an appeal to a social welfare claim, that kind of thing. And they've also got a phone and email service that you can always call or email into. And they do have specialist services as well. So FLAC provides free legal advice to people, and they have clinics that can be done on request, or if your query is escalating to the level of needing legal representation. And we also have the money advice and budgeting service, or MABS as they're called, who can provide help by appointment as well. So just be aware of that. Once you're here in Ireland, you're not on your own. We have this really, really handy tool that can point you to the nearest individual CIC where you can physically go in and talk to somebody. I know I'm a little bit like that myself. I would kind of prefer to talk to somebody one-to-one, and things can be lost over the phone or by email. So you do have that option. You can go in physically to a Citizens Information Center and talk to an information officer. And we also have a dedicated phone service. Whereas this is called CIC or the CICs, we also have SIPs, or the Citizens Information Phone Service. This is run out of Cork. I actually went over there and sat over the desk of somebody who was an information officer at the phone service, and they're really, really good. I can't say enough about the great work that the information officers do at the phone service. They're really, really on the ball. They're very knowledgeable. They have a lot of subject matter expertise about really anything: housing supports, social welfare, entitlements, healthcare, anything. They're really, really solid. And it's something that's also supported by us. So Citizens Information Board funds those individual CICs, but we also fund this phone service. So you can contact them from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m., Monday to Friday. If you're in Ireland, you want to use this number, 0818-074-000. Now, if you're calling from outside Ireland, you do need to make sure that you use the Ireland country code, and that is +353, and it's a different phone number. It's 21229-8178. So just be aware that you do have to make an international call using that international number if you're going to contact SIPs from the United States. And also be aware that there is a time difference. East Coast is going to be 5 hours, Central Time is going to be 6, and so on. So just be aware that you are going to need to transpose the opening hours to fit when you're calling from the United States. I should mention too, if you've got any kind of concern about hearing or speech difficulty, we do have a really handy live advisor chat service that's available from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., again, Monday to Friday. And it's an alternative way of communicating with us if you've got hearing issues or speech difficulties and want to just chat with somebody live and get in contact with us that way. So we've got some really handy resources to you there that you can use to contact us and get information. And one is, I think, a little bit better suited to people who are currently in the US and have queries, whereas you still do have those kind of supports when you're in Ireland. Of course, you can call the phone service when you're in Ireland, but of course, if you want to talk to somebody face to face, you do have a fairly good number of citizens information services available to you with pretty wide coverage across the state, wherever you end up living. So how do you open it up for questions now, if anyone has any? If there's something you wanted to see on the website, I'm happy to navigate around and kind of show you how it works. But yeah, happy to take any questions if anyone has them.
Yeah, I'll give it a second. If anyone does, again, Q&A in the bottom. And I did spam the chat a little bit while you were speaking, Michael. So I wanted to share with everyone just to draw a little attention there. Okay, great. And then Michael included the returning to Ireland email if you have questions on that page. But I was thinking, just as you were sharing, Michael, if I could briefly share, I did help one of my clients one time apply for the home support service. So just to piece together all of these different things, if we're thinking, where do we even start? In the chat, Michael showed how on Citizens Information you can access the application for home support. And I put that application and the nursing home support application in the chat. So honestly, I would recommend for everyone on this, on this call, probably download those applications because they are the most current, they're the most recent. Of course, you can go back into the Citizens Information website to find them. but it's really helpful to have that on hand. And for me, what the process looked like is, okay, I had this application. I was working with the client to figure out what does she need to fill it out. And we ran into a lot of questions. These applications are 20 pages long, they're complicated. And so then that was the moment where I would email or pick up the phone and call a Citizens Information Center or Sage Advocacy. So I just want to say that if I'm going to kind of like, what are the steps here? You know, I would get that application, gather as much of the documents and information you can on your own, but then go ahead and call an advocate to ask them for support as you work through it.
Yeah, it could be a situation where if you've got the documents that are necessary and the information officer can walk you through it over the phone, that works. But I know we really do emphasize to people that if you've got, especially with those very technical, high stakes applications, you know, it's nursing home support, it's social welfare applications, they're really important things. And I know I would be nervous filling those things out. And if I was concerned that am I reading this right? I know, especially as an American coming, that things are called slightly, that use different terms. Why is everything called a scheme? Those kinds of things. I always wonder, am I really interpreting this correctly? So I would just say, make sure, especially if you're here already, have hard copies of the documents and bring them with you. That could be everything from bank statements to health insurance information that you've got. If you've got private insurance here in Ireland, or if you're just using the public, having all of that kind of information in addition to passports, birth certificates, marriage certificates. You should make sure to have those things handy with you when you go to a CIC location. But if there's anything numerical, you know, PPS numbers, those kinds of things, it would be helpful to have those handy as well when you call into a phone service. And of course, if you've got a question about a form, bring the form with you, and the information officer can walk you through it in hard copy. And of course, if you go in to talk to an information officer in the CIC, they're going to be able to pull the PDF up themselves and walk you through it and probably print it off. But do have a copy with you, and you take notes on it. You can write things out. You can have it there physically and say, "I don't understand what this line means. What does this mean? Why are they using this term? I don't know what this means." So it's yeah, I'll stop rambling.
Yeah, Helen, do you have any, you know, thoughts on when is the moment to maybe call Sage and ask for support?
Yeah, I mean, after that point, there is a lot of documentation that's required, you know, valuations of properties, dealing with financial institutions and things like that. So I think a lot of people might have difficulty in trying to gather all of the information together, and to explain, you know, why it's needed, and maybe deal with the nursing home support scheme office on their behalf as well. So I'd say after that point, if at that point they can make a referral to Sage then, or supporting them to transition then actually into the nursing home as well.
And
In
I'm
general, yeah, if you have a question, don't try and maybe don't assume, especially as somebody who is new or you know, is like in my case, I maybe don't understand all the terminology. I just don't assume. It's better to just give SIPs a call, and they're very very good. And the wait times are not bad. They're very knowledgeable. They can really go through with you very thoroughly. So
yeah, I'm going to share my screen just so if, you know, for what we're saying of when is the point to reach out to Citizens Information or Sage for help, we have a slide with their contact information, their websites. Again, if you download the Care Connection slides that are in the chat, you're going to have all those links they went through and their emails and phone numbers, but I'll show it on the screen as well. Okay. Okay, so there we are. So that's how you can reach any and all of us. Helen was nice enough to share her direct email, but also we have the general Sage Advocacy email, citizens information. We have the website, and then Michael put the email for returning to Ireland specifically in the chat. And then, of course, for the coalition, you know, these are the sorts of questions that the Irish centers I explained in the beginning that are, you know, largely on the West Coast, East Coast, and then there's us in Chicago. We have staff at every center who help with these kinds of things. So say you just want to talk to someone, just even to explore all of this, and you're not sure where to begin, you're welcome to reach out to us as well.
I should mention too, just over the course of this year, it hasn't all been published yet, obviously, because I'm still engaged in the research, but there are some pages that are going to be coming up about, for example, essential documents. So things you should have handy as you're coming over. Just, you might forget things. It might not cross your mind that I should have that when I come over here. And so at some point this year, I can't say when exactly it'll be up, but I do intend to have a page up on the Returning to Ireland category or portal, as it's called, on the Citizen Information website that will just have a very basic explainer of essential documents that you should bring with you to facilitate an easy, smooth move over. And just should say as well, if you just Google Citizens Information, we're the first thing that pops up, the Citizen Information online website, and that's going to just pop up with that homepage that I showed you with all the different categories.
Okay, we'll give it a couple more minutes if there are questions. I'm not seeing any right now, but please, now's the time. We have a couple more minutes, so if you have a question, use that Q&A function at the bottom. No question's a bad question. Okay, we'll give it one more minute. Yeah, thank you so much for your time, Michael and Helen. I do want to frame that in terms of this webinar and how it was developed. We realized, I kind of realized through how I mentioned trying to help one person with home support services or applying to home support services from abroad. There's not clear protocol on this. Oftentimes, it's just trying to find the application and hope for the best. So I will say that the tips on how to do this while you're abroad, we did a lot of brainstorming amongst the three of us to think of how to do that, how to get the applications in your hands. Michael's been like adding a lot to the Citizens Information website on this topic. So I just, I want to say that this information has been collected for people's benefit today, but I think it'll be expanded upon as well. And
yeah, it's constantly expanding and updating. That's one of the major things that we do there is we're constantly monitoring updates to legislation and statutory instruments, anything that might change eligibility or means testing, anything that changes, we, as soon as possible, ensure that the website is updated to reflect that because we don't want people making an application under the impression that some old piece of information is correct. We don't want them thinking that something from 2023 is correct when in fact legislation from February 2024 is impacted. I believe that's one of the things on one of the pages I was showing is that actually in February of 2024 there was a change and that it's relevant to know that because it has an impact for how you fill out the application.
Yeah, definitely. And I know Sage is also extremely up to date because they're helping people in real time problem solving all of this. If you have any final thoughts, Helen, go ahead.
No, my email address is there anyway. And so if anyone has any queries about any of the schemes that are available, they can always send an email and I can get back to them.
Same here. Yeah, and it can be really anything related to returning to Ireland. Like I said, I manage the Returning to Ireland portal, but I also work in terms of verification and what I do on the team with moving country, immigration, all the international stuff. So I'm constantly dealing with things like bringing a non-EEA spouse into Ireland. How does that work? How do visas work? All of those things, which of course I've got personal experience with it too. So any questions you have about getting here, it can be driver's licenses, how does the healthcare system work? How does private versus public work? What are the private healthcare plans that I could get? Anything like that, you can, of course, email me. And it's useful for me to get those kinds of queries because it informs me in terms of updating the actual website and making it more beneficial to people who want to return. So anything you give me by email is going to ultimately feed back into improving the website. So
wonderful. Okay, sounds good. Yeah, and if you, this webinar has been recorded. So for the attendees, if there's anyone you think will benefit from this information, I'm going to send out the recording and the slides and all those PDFs again, probably about a week from now. So you'll have, if there's anything you didn't save, you'll get it all soon. And thank you all for joining. I think that'd be the end of the webinar. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Jamie.
Yeah, thank you all. Thank you, Michael and Helen. I really appreciate it. I know,
no problem.
Work, so thank you.
No problem.
See you later.
Bye.